From the outside, it looked like just another routine rookie signing. A talented and charismatic fifth-round quarterback put pen to paper on his first NFL contract with the franchise still figuring out where he fit on the depth chart. The headlines were unremarkable. The numbers seemed modest by NFL standards. But buried in a clause that most people would overlook was a detail that could permanently shift the balance of power between players and the league. Shedeur Sanders didn't just sign a rookie contract, he established a blueprint. The compensation looked identical to every other fifth-round pick. Nothing flashy, nothing that would make executives lose sleep. But Shedeur didn't care about appearances. He was driven by a family legacy that's been reshaping the sports business landscape since the early 1990s. Leverage was what mattered to him. Ownership was what he was after, and he was focused on dominating the business side just as much as excelling on the field. That's where the prime equity clause came into play. Despite its simple wording, the impact was profound. Shedeur retained 100% of the rights to his name, image, and likeness. Plus, he secured 20% of every dollar generated from brand-related merchandise, sponsorships, and media content. His brand, not the league's or the team's. 20% from jerseys bearing his name, 20% from special edition merchandise lines. Every highlight clip monetized by the league in official NFL broadcasts, Shedeur gets a cut. This wasn't some legal loophole, it was intentional. Coach Prime Shedeur Sanders had spent decades in sports, watching athletes become global icons while remaining controlled by the leagues that employed them. He witnessed rookies generating millions for the NFL through jersey sales while personally receiving little beyond their base salary. He saw athletes become the faces of marketing campaigns without owning any media rights to their own image. And when Shedeur's turn came, Shedeur made sure history wouldn't repeat itself. The result? In his debut season alone, before playing a single regular season snap, Shedeur generated hundreds of millions in brand-related revenue for the Browns and the entire NFL ecosystem. His jersey became a national bestseller, not because he was already an established NFL star, but because the Sanders family had already built one of the most passionate and engaged fan bases in all of sports. And thanks to the prime equity clause, Shedeur didn't have to settle for a token paycheck while the league cashed in. Reports suggest over $14 million in direct profit flowed straight into his accounts, unfiltered by the NFL's revenue sharing system and unrestricted by collective bargaining limitations. Because he owned his brand, his fifth-round rookie contract transformed into one of the most lucrative first-year deals in NFL history. The league wasn't ready for it. You see, the NFL's empire has been built on controlling player identities and images. They license the jerseys, they approve the sponsorships, they own the media rights. When a player's highlight goes viral, the NFL typically profits, not the athlete. But Shedeur's deal carved out a completely different path. He's more than just the Browns' quarterback. He's a standalone brand operating within the NFL. The ripple effect has already started. Agents are calling his camp wanting to know how to replicate the clause for their own clients. This precedent will undoubtedly shape rookie negotiations in the next draft class, because once players realize that controlling their likeness can double or triple their earnings, there's no going back. The NFL's pushback has been subtle but firm. Executives worry that if too many players demand equity provisions, the league's centralized control over merchandise could collapse. Imagine a dozen rookies each controlling their own jersey sales. Suddenly, the NFL's retail profit margins shrink, and individual teams lose leverage in marketing their own players. But for Shedeur, this isn't a problem. It's the plan. He's not trying to tear down the system, he's trying to evolve it. He's already stated in interviews that players should view themselves as CEOs, not just employees. Yes, he's a quarterback, but his real business is Shedeur Sanders Incorporated. This isn't just about money, it's about autonomy. Autonomy to sign sponsorship deals without league interference. Autonomy to create and directly profit from his own media content. Digital shorts, documentaries, YouTube series. Autonomy to build a brand that will outlast his NFL career, just like his father did with television, sponsorships, and longevity. And longevity is what scares the league most. When athletes own their brand, the NFL becomes one chapter rather than the entire story. The league has resisted that power shift for decades. Here's the thing, though. Shedeur is built for this. At Colorado, he wasn't just playing football. It was a masterclass in modern athlete marketing. He was creating content, engaging with fans, and building a persona that went far beyond his stat line. By the time he entered the NFL, his audience was already established, and he kept it rather than handing it over to the league. Now the question is how far this paradigm can go. Can NFL players negotiate for a share of the team-branded merchandise they help sell? Could future stars build direct-to-consumer sports businesses instead of relying on the traditional marketing machine? The answer might be yes. If Shedeur's success continues, corporate sponsors are already lining up through his personal channels, energy drink deals, clothing lines, content collaborations, rather than going through the Browns. Because when they sign Shedeur, they're not just getting an NFL player, they're getting access to the entire Sanders machine, the Coach Prime Association, the built-in audience, the ability to bypass league restrictions, and marketing that feels authentic instead of corporate and manufactured. It's created a fascinating dynamic inside the Browns organization. On one hand, the team benefits from the heightened attention, ticket sales, merchandise, media coverage. On the other hand, they know Shedeur's value exists independently of them, which is rare in professional sports. Most rookies need the team's platform to become stars. Shedeur brought his own platform. And this wasn't just luck, it was strategy. Most rookie contracts are boilerplate, copied straight from the league's standard forms. The prime equity clause was crafted, fought for, and defended long before it was ever signed. That's why, in some league circles, Shedeur's contract is already known as the Sanders precedent. And if history is any guide, he won't be the last. NBA superstars like LeBron James and Kevin Durant are already building empires alongside their playing careers. Global soccer icons like Messi and Ronaldo have prioritized their brands as much as their athletic performance. Shedeur simply accelerated the timeline for the NFL, which has been slower to adapt. Almost immediately after Shedeur's contract details leaked, the whispers began. A new kind of energy emerged in NFL front offices, where executives typically view rookie signings as little more than routine paperwork. This energy was a mix of disbelief, curiosity, and in some cases, outright concern. General managers were exchanging rapid-fire text messages. "Have you seen this Sanders clause?" Agents were calling the NFPA asking whether the current collective bargaining agreement would even allow such a contract. And marketing departments were scrambling to figure out if this meant they'd have to share revenue streams they'd long considered untouchable. The NFL's entire business model relies on the idea that the league's brand, the Shield, comes first above any individual player. Sure, they promote stars, but those stars operate within the league's control structure. Shedeur's deal cracked that structure open. And it wasn't just a crack, it was the kind of hairline fracture that, if you're not careful, spreads quickly. Inside the offices of the NFLPA, there was a different reaction: opportunity. Player representatives have long pushed for athletes to have greater control over their likeness and merchandise earnings, and the league has consistently resisted. Now, one rookie quarterback had just accomplished exactly that without a full-blown labor dispute. Some union members saw Shedeur's clause as a test case, proof of concept they could leverage in the next round of collective bargaining. But the league's legal team was already moving in the opposite direction. How do we stop this from becoming the standard? They knew the upcoming draft class would be watching closely. If even a handful of high-profile rookies demanded similar terms, the entire merchandising model could shift overnight. That would mean decreased consolidated revenue, less control over branding, and fewer exclusive deals the league could negotiate without player approval. In other words, a loss of power. On the player side, the ripple effect was already visible. Throughout locker rooms across the league, veterans were pulling their younger teammates aside to talk business. Wide receivers who'd never seen a dime beyond their base contract despite selling thousands of jerseys were now asking their agents why they didn't have equity clauses. Defensive players were starting to think about how they could monetize their growing social media followings without the league taking a cut. And incoming rookies now had a blueprint, courtesy of Shedeur. Agents started dissecting the language of his contract, preparing to use it as leverage in future negotiations. "We're going to push for a Sanders-style clause," several had already told their college clients. The Sanders-style clause, it was becoming insider terminology, the kind of phrase that would be common currency in NFL business circles within a year. For his part, Shedeur wasn't shy about addressing the bigger picture. In interviews, he consistently steered the conversation toward empowerment. "If you don't own your name, you don't own your work," he told one local reporter. It was more than a soundbite, it was a mission statement, and he knew exactly what he'd done. He wasn't going to let this story die in a single news cycle. Caught in the middle, the Browns were walking a delicate line. Publicly, they praised Shedeur's maturity, focus, and on-field ability. Privately, they were adjusting to the fact that their rookie quarterback had become bigger than the team's marketing department. Normally, when a player's popularity skyrockets, the team benefits. But with Shedeur, the team wasn't used to sharing that benefit. In the locker room, it was different. His teammates didn't see his business success as a threat. They respected it. Some even started asking for advice. How do you negotiate media rights? How do you build a brand that lasts beyond your playing days? Shedeur didn't gatekeep the answers. If anything, he seemed to enjoy breaking it down, explaining how his father had taught him to train like an athlete, but think like a CEO. And here's the thing, this wasn't theoretical money. The numbers were staggering. Shedeur's personal brand channels, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, were already profitable and performing well. Under the NFL spotlight, those numbers exploded. And because he owned the rights, every highlight video that went viral on his pages paid him, not the league. Every time a fan bought a jersey from an official store, a percentage went directly to Sanders. The sponsors loved it. Unlike other rookies, where the team or league acted as a middleman, Shedeur could negotiate directly. That meant more authentic partnerships and faster campaign turnarounds. Within months, he'd signed deals with brands outside the NFL's typical stable, fashion labels, tech companies, even a streaming service producing docuseries. The NFL's marketing executives couldn't ignore it. They'd spent years perfecting a one-size-fits-all approach to player branding, and now here was someone who maybe didn't need it and was possibly doing it better. That was dangerous. If Shedeur's model proved sustainable, the league might have to rethink how it handled every marketable player. The first sign of real resistance came at the annual owners' meeting. Several executives voiced concerns about contract irregularities that could disrupt revenue sharing. It was a careful conversation. Nobody wanted to appear like they were targeting one individual, but everyone in the room knew they were talking about Shedeur Sanders. They didn't like the precedent, but they couldn't argue with the results. And for the first time in a long time, it was clear that while the league still had the shield, one player had built something powerful enough to stand beside it, not beneath it.